Well, welcome everyone. We really appreciate you joining us today for this webinar on service, which you're going to learn a lot about if you haven't already learned a bit about it. It's a really exciting opportunity that involves all sorts of things that we don't necessarily think about directly as STEM focused, but they really are. I'm excited about it. One of my favorite TIES consultants, Toby Bothell, has been working on this for quite a while, and she's brought some of her friends from EDC to join us today. We're going to try to learn a little bit, answer your questions, and I think we'll probably be out of here in the like 30-minute neighborhood. We've been trying to make these webinars a little bit shorter. We know, well, I guess we don't know. I can only speak for myself. I'm a little Zoom burned out, so we've been trying to reduce the length of some of these. So the service curriculum is an inquiry-based, totally free resource designed to inspire young people to dive into challenges in their own communities, to understand the importance of public service, and to discover pathways to vital future-facing careers that emphasize STEM. Another really important goal of service is to get students to think about how they can use STEM to solve issues in their communities. Those of you who are in the STEM world, and I see some of you in that room right there, you know this is the thing we talk about all the time. How do we take this learning, this iterative design, digital fabrication, making, engineering process, all of these things? They're all great in a vacuum. They're still fun. But what we know is that we get a lot more power out of them when students can understand that they can use these skills to make a visible difference in their own school or community or across the country. So that's a big part of this work and something that I really love. Through the collaboration between EDC and TIES, we've been kind of introducing this service program to teachers in the STEM ecosystem so they can gain a really deeper understanding of why and how civics belongs in STEM. So I'm really excited to invite a couple of really incredible folks that I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. And the first is Jess. Jess, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, and then also let us know, why do we care about civics and STEM?
Yeah. So hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Juliuson. As Jeremy mentioned, I am at EDC and my office is in the Boston area. So I'm a Northeasterner. I'm also a recovering social studies teacher, high school studies, social studies teacher. So I do come from a classroom teaching background and have been lucky enough to fall into kind of a job where I get to do curriculum and teaching and fun things like developing a service project. And so the why, honestly, while I've been doing my job at EDC, I've been kind of wearing two hats, and one of them has been a civics hat and social studies hat, and one of them has been kind of a STEM hat. And then this weird grant came along from the Department of Defense, and it was for civics in STEM. And we all kind of went, okay, so the universe is telling us something here. So basically for us, we saw it as an opportunity to, earlier than college, earlier than career, really kind of help students make the connections between civics, not just being something like kind of spitting back names, dates, and the three branches of government in one class, but rather being something that's kind of connected to everything. So this kind of informed connection that they would bring. So I think that for us, it was just a really exciting opportunity to kind of break down some of those silos across the disciplines and really help students see that knowing how civic engagement works, how they can have a voice, that works in every discipline and it works in the real world. So for us, that was kind of the big opportunity. So that's our why.
That's really great. And I know that you've got a lot that the two of you want to kind of share. But before we do that, Reagan, let's meet you a little bit. Can you tell us kind of how you came to EDC and why this service project is part of your focus and passion?
Yes, I can. So hi, my name is Reagan Davenport. I am also work at EDC. I am located in the DC, Virginia area, and I was part of the service team. So how did I come to service? Well, when I joined service, there had already been a lot of brainstorming about the project. And as Jess said, this grant came along and all of these ideas were kind of on the board. And so when I joined the team, we were really in the beginning stages of trying to hash out, what is this going to look like? Once we start, I was one of the co-curriculum developers. And so really trying to get a grasp on what it was going to look like and how we would present that to teachers and students. And so my why is kind of rooted in that, right? We want teachers and students to have a great experience with this curriculum. We want our students to be informed citizens in our country. And so that was enough to get me on the bandwagon. So my why is I just want everyone to have all the information that they need to make informed decisions about things that are happening in their community as well as our country.
I love that. All right, so Jess, I know that there's a lot that you want to talk about. I'm excited to learn more and to learn about some of the teachers who've been implementing this curriculum. I know that you tried to get some teachers here with us today. Unfortunately, we're kind of during the school day, so that didn't happen. But I also know you've got a lot of stories from the field that'll help illustrate why this is so important in schools and what that reaction has been. So I'm excited to learn from you, and let's hear what's up next.
Okay, sure. So first of all, what is it? So Service is basically a free curriculum. It's geared for high school, but we've had a lot of interest from middle schools as well, and even some post-secondary. So, it's flexible, it's adaptable. So it's basically 5 modules that integrate civics and STEM, and they engage students in inquiry, but not just inquiry, it engages them in their own communities. So it's basically kind of like having kids go out, ask good questions, gather information, think about their sources of information, and then try to decide what kinds of actions they want to take and what power they have as young people. And so every module follows that same arc. It follows an inquiry arc, and Reagan can talk more about that if teachers are interested in that. But each module basically has a central theme, something like, duty and service, voice and persuasion, things like that, where students, that's a common theme across a module. And students basically spend their time investigating with their classmates central questions. And so there's room for students to work individually, room for them to work in groups, and they all have to work on something. It's a thing. So every module has a project. And our 5th module actually has something that a lot of people are required to do now, which is a culminating project or capstone. So they're flexible curriculum modules. Each module is about 6 weeks long and comprised of about 15 lessons. We usually use that kind of 45, 50-minute time frame. And what we did was we co-wrote this thing with teachers. We wrote down something we thought was awesome, and then we sent it out to our pilot teacher reviewers who said, oh, this is not so awesome, and they helped us make it better. And so basically they took all of our grand ideas. We were trying to stuff in all kinds of, lots of civics and history, lots of media literacy strategies, lots of career exploration and career connections. And teachers were telling us, oh my gosh, that's just too much. There's too much in here. So it forced us to really kind of distill down the really important parts of each. And so each module has all of those things in it, but we've tried to kind of pick and choose what goes into each one. So that's really the it. And I will tell you that, we've had a lot of infighting, right, Ray, about, what goes
Absolutely.
in and what comes out. And so ultimately, we really asked teachers to be the arbiters of that. So teachers told us in the end what was most important to them for working with their kids.
I'm curious, can you talk to us a little bit about, because I love this evolution, and I also think that it really speaks to kind of thoughtfulness of curriculum development. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you ended up pulling out and some of the things you had to push in response to educator feedback?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, we're gonna both
go, Ray.
We're gonna
Ray
have
knows the best
on the webinar. We're gonna do some fighting on the webinar. So a great example would be in module 4, which is about dialogue and respect. In the first iteration, it was loyalty and dissent, right? Which are sort of like heavy terms. And so we were kind of like, we don't know how teachers are feeling about this. We don't know if this should stay or if this should go. The focus was on students being able to really have civil discourse, right? And so what we had initially in what we call 1.0, we had a 1.0, a 2.0, and a final version of Service. We had this lesson that was about all like the executive branches in the government. And so we had so many team meetings where we're like, this is just a lot, right? Like executive branches of the government, that could be a whole module within itself. So we can't incorporate all of these other special ingredients that we have for service and cover executive branches of the government. I think we literally went back and forth, and just, you can remind me, for about a year. Like, we would say, oh, we're going to cut it, and then somehow it would magically appear in like a comment. Somebody would say, oh, I think we really should still keep this here. So that was a big one. That's the one that stuck with me, because, as Jess knows, I was on team cut it, and so other folks were like team keep it. But really just trying to make sure we had what we needed there, but that we did a good job unpacking it, right? Because if we just throw a little bit of executive branches in the government in there, and teachers told us, like, hey, some of my students haven't had a course on executive branches in the government, so they're not going to really understand this. Whereas some other teachers who had like AP government classes were like, oh, like, this was great, my students understood everything. So just making sure that we had things in there that teachers could scaffold, but that we also did a good job of unpacking. We didn't just want to sprinkle it in there and then just layer a bunch of content on it. We really wanted to be thoughtful about it. So I don't know if Jess has anything she would like to add about that or not.
Yeah, I actually would, because, as again, I mentioned that I'm a recovering social studies teacher, and, so loving those standards, and, the court cases and the dates and the big events. And so, I was really torn when it came to what is our integrity here. We want to align to standards. We want this to be a meaningful, robust curriculum, but we also don't want to just plop things in there that align to the standards that are really not going to be useful in the classroom, just to say that we have them in there. And so for me, I found that it was really forced us to hold ourselves accountable, to make sure we were still aligned to standards, even as we removed things. And so we had some incredible partners, the National Council for the Social Studies, namely the National Association for Media Literacy Education. They reviewed our stuff and they told us if we were veering too far away and it was too light, too fluffy, that it isn't even going to be meaningful learning for students. So I think, we really had to walk that line. It was a tightrope. And I think in the end, we feel good about where we landed. But that said, I will also point out that we have a teacher toolkit, and our teacher toolkit is kind of this supportive resource for teachers. So if they want to go further, want to find more resources, want to go deeper, want to, expand a certain element of a module, we put a lot of that stuff we cut is in there. So, teachers can go there and they can still, it's not gone, it's still relevant and aligned, but teachers can use it or not as they see fit. And it's really an opt-in kind of thing.
And that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that background. It's always, I think, so important. And one of the things that we unfortunately don't see, frankly, all that often is there are a lot of curriculum developers out there doing great work and their hearts are in the right place, but they don't actually talk to educators all that often. And if they do, they don't actually make changes based on what those educators, are kind of saying. So I wonder if you could dig into, I know you've got like, I saw kind of your framework of things that you want to talk about. So I might interrupt periodically, but I'm hoping you can kind of dig into this importance of STEM in service. And I wouldn't mind a little bit about this importance of joy that you've talked about as well.
So I can certainly start there. So one of the things that we were finding, and I think teachers will recognize this from their own experiences, is that there's been this kind of false dichotomy between humanities and STEM. Like it's either or. So you're either in one camp or you're in another. And if you are doing too much humanities, you're not doing enough STEM, and vice versa. And so one of the things that we kind of wanted to tackle was we didn't think that was the right narrative. We think that really civics and STEM is really kind of transdisciplinary. And so we really wanted to break down some of those silos and make more connections across the disciplines. And so for us, STEM is pretty much the air we breathe now. I mean, that's going to be our world. It's how we live our lives. We're immersed in STEM all the time. But the decisions we make in our lives or as professionals in our jobs, we have to make informed decisions about how we're going to be within this STEM environment. How are we going to use the technologies that we have? How are we going to apply them? Things like the use of drones have all kinds of civic implications when you think about right to privacy, when you think about right to safety. How do we balance those things? Who do I vote for, when I'm voting for my, town council person, and they have this view on drones? What do I think? And how do I want to position myself? So there's civic decisions we make all the time in this STEM environment, even if that's not what we're doing for work. even if we're not doing it as a school project. And so we really want students to get practice at that while they're in school. And it's a relatively low stakes, safe environment, you know, before they're out in the world on their own as individuals. They can kind of practice learning what they need to know to make those decisions. What am I basing my information on? It's one of the reasons media literacy was such a key component here. So that was one part of it. But the other piece is that civics is, you know, I think I'm probably naming the elephant in the room here when I say civics has been a very charged topic lately for teachers. It's been a very tumultuous, tense kind of subject to teach in schools. In any state that you're in, I think there's been tensions that have been raised one way or another for teachers who are attempting to teach civics in their classrooms. And one of the criticisms of civics has been, it's all about criticism, and it's all about saying what's wrong, and it's trying to divide us and tear down our democracy, or that we don't value our democracy somehow. And I guess I would want to make the case that civics is actually really a joyful act, that being civically engaged is something that's connecting you with your community. It's making you feel part of something. It's helping you influence things for the good. And so thinking about that positive influence you want to have is a civic act, you know. And so for us, we kind of wanted to reframe that narrative too, because we think it does bring joy to students to be active, to get engaged. We also think, and this is not a small thing, the teachers feel joy when they're helping their students do that. And so teachers really need to feel renewed and refreshed right now. And we're hoping that this curriculum and these experiences will be joyful for teachers and their students as well. Ray, is that, I don't know if that jives with what you're thinking is. You've certainly been talking a lot with the teachers that are pilot teachers.
It absolutely jives. Like everything you said. One of the most common pieces of feedback that we've gotten from teachers is how much their students loved discussing, you know, these topics that are rooted in civics, and how to look at STEM as a pathway to solving issues in their community that are rooted in civics. And so we had a handful of our pilot teachers say, and students, when we took our teacher survey and our student survey, which they had to fill out after they piloted the modules, that was the common thread. They really loved discussing these things. They loved having a discussion with each other and being able to engage with each other and hear other folks' viewpoints, even if they didn't agree with them all of the time. Just being able to have that discussion, go out in the community and have discussions with folks. We had a teacher that had her class interview a citizen in their town that was like 101 for an oral history interview. And she's like, oh, my students were just blown away at all of the history that's in our community, and all of the things that have happened here that they didn't know about. So I think that us wanting the teachers and students to feel joy while they're experiencing this curriculum is like front of mind. It's top of mind for us. And so I'm crossing my fingers, and I'm very confident that we've done that.
So I know that some of the people that are here with us today know about service. I see some people making some comments, but I also know that several don't. Can you kind of talk through a little bit, you know, what does this look like? Like, it all sounds great on paper, but I'm in a school. I care about civics. I care about STEM. I care about problem solving. I know I want to do things that integrate all of those aspects, but how can service help me, and what does the curricula look like?
I think Ray should answer that one. She's our curriculum guru.
Well, I don't know if I would say guru, but I have been eating, sleeping, and breathing service curriculum for the past 2 years. So what we have is, Jess kind of talked about it initially a little bit. We have 5 curriculum modules. They are designed to take 3 weeks. We've heard from teachers that sometimes it's taken them longer, sometimes it's taken them less time, but 5 modules, 3 weeks. There are 15 lessons in each module, and they have sort of all of the pillars, right? Like civics is our baseline, but we've got some media literacy in there. We've got career and workforce connections in there. We've got pathways talking about public service careers and STEM. We kind of have this whole little shebang, right? And so we want teachers to want to do the curriculum. One of the most common questions we get is, well, do I have to do, all of the lessons, or do I have to do all of the modules? Like Jess said, they're standalone modules. So you might look at what you're teaching for the school year. This is sort of the model that our pilot teachers looked at. They looked at what they needed to cover in their school year, and then they looked at how service could fit into that. And so we don't want to make more work for teachers, because we know, as a former teacher, like, you are already overworked and you have many balls in the air. So we wanted to make it easy for teachers to integrate it into something that they're already teaching. That being said, we made sure that it was aligned to certain standards. So we've got a common core ELA standards. Even if I know some folks have said, like, well, we don't really use, Common Core, or we have gotten away from Common Core. There's some ELA in there at the end of the day. It's aligned to the C3 framework, which is the civics framework. You can find those standards actually on the NCSS, which is National Council for Social Studies sites. We've got it aligned to the namely media principles. They don't call them standards, but there's some technology and media standards in there. We've got some pathways to law and government for career. And so there is some alignment in there. Unfortunately, it is not aligned to everyone's specific state yet, but we are looking at getting some feedback from teachers on some things that might be consistent throughout most states, most school districts. We know that it varies. Thank you, Jess, for putting that in the chat for me. And so we've got 5 modules, 15 lessons, 3 weeks, all of the pillars. We've got an awesome teacher toolkit that accompanies all of the modules. And so before you even get started, we're going to tell you what service is about. We're going to tell you how to use the inquiry process, because that sometimes is a sticky area for teachers if they are not used to facilitating with their students. We've got media literacy supports. We've got some ways to talk about how the career connections are built in. We've got supports for talking about difficult topics, how to set up your class to be a safe space. We got it all in there, Jeremy. I want to tell you too much, because I want teachers to go and I want them to check it out for themselves, but some good stuff in there.
So talk, Jess, I know that the two of you have a number of things that you wanted to share today. Let's learn a little more.
Well, one of the things we wanted to share, it's really short. We actually have longer videos and we can share those with you, but we just have a little short, bit with one of our pilot teachers who was sharing with us why she thought service mattered to her, and a service pilot student who was reflecting on her experience with service. They're really short, so if you're interested to hear more from them, I'll put links to the longer versions in the chat. But I don't know, Ray, if you'd be willing to share that video. It's like 18 seconds, very short.
You're muted if you're talking to us, Ray.
Sorry, just trying to get my screen to do what it's supposed to do, Jeremy. Can you see it?
Enable sound, Ray.
Oh, hold on.
There's a little checkbox at the bottom that says something like share audio that you need to click before you share. So you have to stop that share, start it again, click that.
Is it my advanced sharing options? No.
It's so you hit that screen share button, you choose your thing, and then down at the bottom you should have a little checkbox that says share sound.
Ah, there it is.
And one that says optimize for video. Click both of those.
Uh-oh. It's not letting me click on there. Can you see me trying to click and it's not?
I can, but I tell you what, Reagan, while you're trying to get that link working, Jess, I know that there's some new certification kind of pathways that are coming. Could you talk to us a little bit about those while Reagan is figuring out this technical issue?
This is something, so this was a thing that we did not originally set out to do. But when we met with, we came to the TIES convening, first of all, a couple of years ago, and that was Reagan and I had our first experience at that event. And we really had our minds kind of blown. And one of the things that really came to mind was just how logical a connection there was for from service to career skills in STEM. And so we started working with one of our partners, which was, we found we have career skills in every single module. So those are there anyway. But one of the things we noticed was that we were really elevating the communication skills, and there are a lot of them, and they're very useful in any career you go into. And so we started thinking, you know, wouldn't it be great if students who did service could walk away with a credential that's recognized by industry? So something they could put on their resume, they could put in a career portfolio, even applying to colleges if they want to do that. And so we started working with the Law and Public Safety Education Network, who is one of our partners, to develop basically a professional communications certification. And so it's aligned with service. So teachers who want to give their students that opportunity can do it while teaching the service curriculum, but we'll have a separate package that's they can use for it, so that it's actually it will be industry recognized and approved. So it's basically going to be sanctioned by the folks who actually train law enforcement officers and public safety officers. So it's part of the training they give officially on the job. And so we're adapting a lot of that and bringing it to the high school level, and students can walk away with a credential. So we're still in process with that, and we're hoping to finish it up by December. But that's something we're really excited about, because industry credentials are getting pretty big right now, especially with career tech ed. And so for a lot of schools, a lot of teachers, that may be something that's attractive to them, and it gives their students kind of a leg up that other students might not have. So pretty excited about that. So watch this space. We're hoping everything will be ready to launch by December for that.
And I think this is kind of in that vein, but Darlene is asking in the chat if there's any kind of plan to roll out specific professional development. And what does that kind of look like?
Well, Darlene, I swear you're not a plant, but yes, in fact, there is. We have actually just been notified. We've successfully received funding to do a second phase of service. And so that's going to be a curriculum-based professional development opportunity that we're working on with our wonderful TIES partners. And so Reagan is going to be one of our lead professional developers here. And basically what we're going to do is lean into the civics and STEM connection. We brought our pilot teachers, a small set of our pilot teachers, to the TIES convening, and for them, the conflation of civics and STEM really blew their minds. They left with so many ideas. They wanted to go further. They asked us for more. And so we really said, we got to do this. And so we're designing some both virtual and face-to-face experiences for pairs of teachers, one civics and one STEM, who will then be working together not only on how to teach the service curriculum, but they'll also be working with industry partners via their local STEM ecosystem. And so for us, this is just a win-win, because every teacher who does this is going to be linked to their STEM ecosystem. It's a built-in support network. It's a built-in community of practice. They have STEM resources and STEM people that teachers can draw on to develop their classroom projects and activities. So essentially, they'll be co-developing and co-designing and learning from their industry partners. And that's just fun. We've done it before, and teachers love it, and the industry partners love it. And it makes it easier for industry and schools to work together. So they'll be basically developing some challenges for students to explore. So it's a supplement to the curriculum. Yeah, we're very excited about that.
I love that it continues to grow and expand. And Reagan, I know you ran into a couple issues, but I believe our friend Lauren is going to share that video for us.
Lauren is a lifesaver.
Whenever you're ready to roll.
You're too kind. You're too kind. All righty. Can you see? And then let me know if you can hear. Very important.
Once they understand the
and hear
process, they begin to understand not only their rights, but also the responsibilities and duties of citizenship.
As I get ready to graduate high school, I now know that my voice is powerful.
Well, that was a lot of work for that 18 seconds, but it was a good 18 seconds. So we appreciate it. And I think that the key is that the folks who participated on this teacher and student side, the feedback, from what I've heard has been really, really resounding. People saying that they love the curriculum, that they're enjoying it, and that it fills this really important needed gap. So that's what we're hoping people will kind of take away from that little clip. But Jess also put in the chat the full-length version of that same clip, so you can go ahead, click that open now. Don't watch it, but keep paying attention here. We'll be done in just a couple minutes, and make sure that happens as well. So If you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. But I know that I have some questions while we're waiting for any of those to sort of come up. I was wondering if you could talk about the DoD connection a little bit. I know we at TIES do a lot of work with the Department of Defense. I also know that sometimes people are, you know, a little nervous that things might be kind of a recruiting tool or something along those lines. Is that the case here? What is that connection with the Department of Defense?
So I will say it was a new partnership for me. I've never worked with the Department of Defense before, and so the short answer is no, it's not a recruiting tool. In fact, they were very vocal about saying, yes, we want to highlight opportunities for careers that are available through the Department of Defense, but there are also so many civilian careers in STEM, both either as a civilian working with Department of Defense or even just out in the world, not affiliated with the Department of Defense at all. And so we got extreme support to go wide on that and to try to make sure that we were really offering up a real range. And it's not just a range of you know, military or not military, defense or not defense. It's also about disciplines. So what can you do with civics and STEM if what you love is the arts? And so there's careers in the arts, you know, it's really as broader a net as we could cast. And I think one of the things that's been nice is that because it is funded by the Department of Defense, it's been easy for us to show that teaching civics is something that is really post-partisan. It's not something that necessarily it doesn't need to be as politically charged as it often is in the public discourse. And so I think you find that the service curriculum represents a really rich diversity of perspectives, of political beliefs, of backgrounds, and we tried to make it as representative and inclusive as we can. And so the folks that we've been working with, our funders, Louis Lopez and Holly Brown, have been incredibly supportive of that. And you know, I would say have really wanted to give us as much freedom and opportunity to open doors for students. And it doesn't have to be a door to the Department of Defense. It's part of their strategy, of course, to strengthen and support their workforce pipeline. But there's no have to about this curriculum. And it's not a recruitment tool for sure.
And I guess that's maybe my final question is, and I hate that I'm even asking this question, but I know that in my work, when I was still in the school district and districts I work in, there are a lot of topics that, I don't know, seem to me like they should be totally nonpartisan, but have become partisanified, which is a word I just created. And so I wonder, you know, if you have teachers who are thinking about this and they're saying civics, yeah, I mean, that should be easy for everybody, but I'm not so sure in 2023 it will be easy for everybody. Do you have any tools or supports or language that are kind of in place to help educators navigate that and make sure that everyone understands this isn't about politics, this isn't about partisanship, this is just about you know, being good citizens and taking care of our communities and each other?
Go ahead, Ray, you go first.
Well, okay. I'll go first. So we made sure when we were writing the curriculum, and this is feedback that we actually got from teachers sometimes, that, you know, well, this topic seems like it might be left leaning, or this topic seems like it might be right leaning, when we were talking about those things that we had to cut, or what we were going to keep and what we were going to cut. And so, like Jess says, we don't want this to be politically charged at all. What we've sort of done is we have positioned the teachers to do what they feel comfortable with. So what you'll see in the curriculum is we have some very sort of not, you know, risky at all topics, right, that you could introduce to your students to get a conversation going. But we put the onus on the teachers. If you're in a space where you are comfortable discussing certain things, or you have a permission to discuss certain things or certain topics that could be politically charged, we've left that up to the teachers. What we have done is we've built in supports in both the content and in the teacher toolkit to help teachers navigate how to maybe have difficult conversations. In the toolkit, we, you know, sort of have a disclaimer, like, make sure that, you know, this is appropriate before you invite guests in. Make sure you can follow, you know, you follow this protocol before you introduce certain topics. Make sure you sort of are operating in a safe space, because we don't want to put anyone at risk. We know, like, again, that our climate is politically charged, and there's certain words teachers can't say, and there's certain things that students shouldn't be reading and things like that. So we really wanted to support teachers with doing what they felt comfortable with, if that makes sense. That's sort of my take from the curriculum creation side. Jess?
Yeah, I would add, I think it was very much front of mind from the very beginning of this project for us, because in the end, teachers need to feel safe to teach what they teach in the classroom. And so for us, the teacher is the audience here, that we want to support them and empower them to be able to explore these questions and these experiences with their students. The other thing that I would say is that it's clearly a great teachable moment for all of us about how we engage in basically conversation across difference, and how do we have conversations, without avoiding topics, but how do we talk about things that we might not agree on, but talk about them in a way that brings us together and maybe moves us forward together. So some of the things that we work on in the curriculum with students are civil discourse and consensus. So things like, what happens, how do you determine what a person's point of view is? How might you better understand that point of view? How do you listen for understanding? How do you ask deeper questions so that you can fully understand? Then how do you feel about that? And how do you decide how you feel about that? And we give some teachers some tools and prompts that can help them have those conversations. So I think it would be disingenuous to say that is not a problem for teachers. I think we all know right now, this is going to be something every civics teacher is thinking about. But every service teacher is also going to be equipped differently, have different context, have different supports where they are. And so our goal is to really equip them to the point that they're comfortable to use it, and that so that they can go as far as they're ready to go. And our goal is really to equip students. And I would end by that point by just saying it's standards based. So again, teachers can be comforted in the fact that when they're teaching this content, it is aligned to national standards. So they are teaching to those standards. They're not teaching to a political party. They're not teaching to a demographic. They're really teaching to the standards, and those are not partisan. So that's kind of, I think, what can be the most reassuring to teachers who are picking it up.
Absolutely. Well, Jess, Ray, we really appreciate you spending some time with us today. Those of you listening now or into the recording later, the service curriculum is available for free at https://service.edc.org. Lauren's dropping that in the chat right now. If you're interested, please go ahead and drop over to that link and make sure that you bookmark it, get it out to folks. This is really an incredible opportunity. Phase 2 will focus on collaboration and community of practice between civics and STEM teachers. That's going to kick off in spring of 2024. So please share this opportunity with teachers or with industry partners who work in tech, with a June 30th, 2024 deadline looming. I'm sorry, who with issues related to civics who may be interested to this work. Sorry, I just jumped ahead to myself real quick. And Ray is putting up on the screen right now a lot of the service pilot teachers. You may see some folks or some regions that are familiar to you. These are folks who have really dug in. These aren't, I think it's so important to bring that up again, that this isn't a situation where some people, even former educators sitting in an office somewhere, have created this curriculum. This is all living and iterative content that has been developed and grown through the use of practitioners. So you know that it's of a high quality and it's really getting to the core of this issue of civics. The only other thing that we'd like to mention today before we close is that with the June 30th, 2024 deadline looming for when the ESSER 3 funding has to be spent, you can join a webinar November 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time to learn how to activate your ESSER 3 plan in meaningful and impactful ways. Lauren's dropping that link in the chat right now as well. The ESSER 3 11th Hour Solutions for Your District webinar will help ensure that your district doesn't send unspent dollars back to the U.S. Department of Education, or more likely, perhaps buy useless materials and supplies that end up in a storage closet somewhere collecting dust. This webinar will also touch on strategies to support you with compliance, as well as how to sustain the work that you launch with the ESSER 3 fund. So we hope to see you there. Jess, Reagan, thank you so much for joining us today. I love all of this service content. I can't wait to see it grow and evolve, and I can't wait to learn more about Phase 2 as it evolves. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you all next time. Thanks, everyone.